Well, let's play a little music. Playlist. Find the right playlist. Well, hey, Daisy, welcome in. Let's give it a little time for people to drift in before I start reading. We've got 2, possibly 3 stories to read tonight. I hope everybody's week is going well. We're finally halfway through. All downhill from here on out. Uh-oh. Hopefully there's something good at the end. Oh, good. I'm glad. Hey, Songbird, how are you? I'm happy. I'm always happy to see my regulars here. Wings at work, I see that you like the live. Speak up. Make yourself known. Right as rain. I'm doing all right. It's been a it's been a challenge. Last few days have been a challenge, but nothing I haven't faced before. You know, it's been freezing cold here. We've gotten down into. Oh, I'm glad you're excited. I actually have, depending on how we feel, at the end of the second one, at the end of the second story, uh, we may have, I may have I may have a third story, but it's a heavy one. Actually, the stories tonight are kind of heavy. I kind of, when I started planning the stories for tonight, I was kind of like looking at stories that sort of give you that little bit of heebie-jeebies, but more so of the existential dread that we all love so much. Um, the first two stories, the first one is by Ray Bradbury, and the second one is by Arthur C. Clarke. Now, the third one is probably, if we get to it, is probably one of the most famous and controversial science fiction stories of all time. Um, no, these are, yeah, because, well, because a lot of the stuff that I do, they are not public domain, so I can't really repost them. But if they are public domain stories and I felt like they resonated, I put them on my list of audiobooks to do. So to do audiobook versions of them and post them onto my YouTube channel, the other channel that does not want to be mentioned because you know TikTok gets TikTok. We love TikTok. We love the TikTok shop, but TikTok gets a little antsy if you mention other sites, so we won't do that. But it is the other place that I'm streaming, and yeah, so I'm gonna see. I haven't even seen if I got a video, but no. Do, 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 do. Yeah, that's alright. Yes, TikTok is a jealous god. Oh, looks like I do have one viewer over there on TikTok or over on the Yushmoobs, the tubes of you. Um, if you're currently watching over there, drop a chat. Let me know you're here. I always love knowing when people are around. It's awesome. Um, but full transparency about me, because you guys know I like to do that. My unemployment is officially run out, so I'm kind of scrambling to find even temporary work at this point. I've been out since July. That's not going the best, so I'm kind of leaning into this as sort of a way to keep my sanity. Um, I did also have my first meeting with a disability lawyer today because I do have some pretty severe mobility issues. I walk with a cane. I need total knee replacement in both of my knees. I'm a diabetic, so that's a struggle with all of those things. So it's it's been a heavy week. And when you have a heavy week, you want to read heavy stories, right? Sure. But anyway, what what do I do when I'm not doing this? Contemplate the meaning of life and try not to drive myself crazy. Uh, in all seriousness, I do. My daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, is autistic, so I do drive her back and forth to work 'cause she hasn't got her license yet, or back and forth to school because she hasn't got her license yet. I try to take care of things around the house. I try to do some, not hobby stuff, but more learning skills. What the hell? That's weird. Anyway, yeah, I live in Western New York, um, and yeah, and it's with the being a diabetic and doing the total knee replacement, they're very picky about your A1C and your weight and things like that. So I've got some challenges. I'm not a thin guy, so but I'll get through it. And I'm honestly I'm leaning into this stuff. I still applying for jobs and whatnot in my field, but my field is dying. It's I spent 20 plus years doing IT support roles, and yeah, IT support is going the way of the dodo. Oh, nice. Oh, I that yeah. I trust me. I'd take the recommendation if I could. I've been looking for remote work too, so it's one of those things. But you know, fortunately, cost of living here is not too bad. But yeah, I mean they're not asking me to be skinny, which thank God, because that's not gonna happen. But they do want my A1C to get down to at least down to 7, which is not impossible. I just got to find the right combination of drugs and whatnot. So it is now 9:16. So cybersecurity is definitely not dying, but there are a lot of it's outside of the skill set that I currently have, and I'm not sure I can push in there. Hey, Laya, how are you? I am so happy that you're here. Um, Peoples, my one of my newest mutuals, Life with Laya, is here in the room tonight. Um, Laya, is this your first time joining me with my lives? Thank you, Forever Loyal. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. First Wednesday. Okay, cool. Well, I think you're gonna like this because this is definitely not definitely. Yeah, I do remember you being in on Sunday. I do want to mention this really quick. That Sunday night felt like such a huge win for me. Um, if you're here in the United States, Super Bowl Sunday is like a freaking holiday. It just is, and people party all day long, watch the game, and then they go pass out. Oh, great, Sourduck! Great to have you here. Well, yeah, I hope you're in for some. I hope you're down for some heavy storytelling. So, because these are definitely not easy stories, but they're good. They're very good stories. I love them. Anyway, the beginning of my Sunday Night Live was you know it it I was competing with the Super Bowl and really the aftermath of it throughout the whole thing. Um, the the fact that I still had probably half of what I normally have, um, was great. And the people that were there were uh, regulars, and there was a handful of new people, and it was it was beautiful to me because people were making the choice to come in and sit with me for 2 hours and listen to me read a story. Um, and that's just something I live for. It really, these lives really make my week. No, these are not true stories. These are fiction, written by two very famous authors. But yeah, so the fact that I had that, I'm calling Sunday a win. I mean, it's it it was fantastic. So it's validating. It's on my list, Daisy. It's definitely on my list. But I guess it depends. It depends on how you define scary. These stories that I'm going to read tonight are unsettling. Straight up scary? I don't think so. But the thing I love about doing these lives on Wednesday nights, because they're not I'm not bound by a specific genre. The Sour Duck, that is my plan. I'll be completely honest with you. I want to. This is like this is life to me. It's so beautiful. I'm on. I'm usually on for about 2 hours. So the stories that I'm going to read are only about probably about a half hour each. So we throw in some talking like we're doing now. But that is definitely that's short stories. Short stories on Sundays is definitely on the menu. I'm looking at for some. I'm definitely looking at stuff um, to do that. But I also have a couple of special Sunday night bedtime story lives coming up that I'll be talking about soon. So I have one that it's kind of like Mouse and the Motorcycle. It took us 3 hours to get through, and I pushed through it in one night because someone in here really wanted me to do it. So I was happy to. Yeah, Wings at Work. I'm looking at you. Um, Edward Baker, how are you, sir? I am doing well. I do have another special Sunday night coming up where it's going to be a 3 hour live, and we're going to read The Tale of Despero, which, if you've never read, it is a story about a mouse that falls in love with a princess. And it's beautiful. It is really beautiful. So I'm going to get started with these stories tonight because I do want to get through I do want to get through all three, but I did only really plan two. So, I'll kill the music. Whoops. I went down a lot faster than I thought it would. All right. So the first story tonight is called The Foghorn by Ray Bradbury. It was written in the 50s, first published in the Saturday Evening Post. Um, and it is a story that takes place in a lighthouse in a dark and stormy night, like so many stories. So this one is The Foghorn by Ray Bradbury. Out there in the cold water, far from land, we waited every night for the coming of the fog, and it came. And we oiled the brass machinery and lit the fog light up in the stone tower, feeling like two birds in the gray sky. McDunn and I sent the light touching out, red, then white, then red again, to the lonely ships. And if they did not see our light, then there was always our voice, the great deep cry of our foghorn, shuddering through the rags of mist to startle the gulls away like the decks of scattered cards and make waves turn high and foam. I always forget to change my scenes. There we go. It's a lonely life, but you're used to it now, aren't you? Asked McDunn. Yes, I said. What the heck? My camera is on, first of all, TikTok. Freaking weirdos. Now TikTok is being weird tonight. So if you guys can share and like the crap out of this, it's gonna keep it going out there. Yes, I said, you're a good talker, thank the Lord. Well, it's your turn on land tomorrow, he said, to dance with the ladies and drink gin. What do you think, McDunn, when I leave you out here all alone? On the mysteries of the sea. McDunn lit his pipe. It was 7:15 of cold November evening, the heat on, the light switching its tail in 200 directions, the foghorn bumbling in the high throat of the tower. There wasn't a town for 100 miles down the coast, just a road, which came lonely through the dead country to the sea, with few cars on it. A stretch of 2 miles of cold water out to our rock, and rare few ships. The mysteries of the sea, said McDunn thoughtfully. You know, the ocean's the biggest damned snowflake ever. It rolls and swells 1,000 shapes and colors, no two alike. Strange. One night years ago I was here alone when all the fish of the sea surfaced out there. Something made them swim in and lie in the bay, sort of trembling and staring up at the tower light going red, white, across them to see, so I could see their funny faces. I turned cold. They were like a big peacock's tail, moving out there until midnight. Then, without so much as a sound, they slipped away. The million of them was gone. I kind of think maybe in some sort of way they came all those miles to worship. Strange. But think how the tower must look to them, standing 70 feet above the water, the god light flashing out from it, and the tower declaring itself with a monster voice. They never came back, those fish. But don't you think for a while they thought they were in the presence? I shivered. I looked out at the long gray lawn of the sea stretching away into nothing and nowhere. Oh, the sea's full, McDunn puffed his pipe nervously, blinking. He had been nervous all day and hadn't said why. For all our engines and so-called submarines, it'll be 10,000 centuries before we set foot on the real bottom of the sunken lands, in the fairy kingdoms there, and no real terror. Think of it. It's still the year 300,000 before Christ down under there. While we've paraded around with trumpets, lopping off each other's countries and heads, they have been living beneath the sea 12 miles deep and cold in a time as old as the beard on a comet. Yes, it's an old world. Come on, I've got something special I've been saving up to tell you. We ascended the 80 steps, talking and taking our time. At the top, McDunn switched off the room lights so there'd be no reflection in the plate glass. The great eye of the light was humming, turning easily in its oiled socket. The foghorn was blowing steadily once every 15 seconds. Sounds like an animal, don't it? McDunn nodded to himself. A big, lonely animal crying in the night. Sitting here on the edge of 10 million years, calling out to the deeps. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And the deeps do answer. Yes, they do. You've been here now for 3 months, Johnny, so I better prepare you. About this time of year, he said, studying the murk and fog, something comes to visit the lighthouse. The swarms of fish, like you said? No,
this is something else. I've put off telling you because you might think I'm daft, but tonight's the latest I can put it off, for my calendar's marked right from last year. Tonight's the night it comes. I won't go into detail, you'll have to see it for yourself. Just sit down there. If you want, tomorrow you can pack your duffel and take the motorboat into land and get your car parked there at the dinghy pier on the Cape and drive back into some little island town to keep your lights burning nights. I won't question or blame you. It's happened 3 years now, and this is the only time anyone's been here with me to verify it. You wait and watch.
Half an hour passed with only a few whispers between us. When we grew tired waiting, McDunn began describing some of his ideas to me. He had some theories about the foghorn itself.
One day, many years ago, a man walked along and stood in the sound of the ocean in a cold, sunless shore and said, "We need a voice to call across the water to warn ships. I'll make one. I'll make a voice that is like an empty bed beside you all night long, and like an empty house when you open the door, and like the trees in autumn with no leaves, a sound like the birds flying south, crying, and a sound like November wind, and the sea on the hard, cold shore. I'll make a sound that's so alone that no one can miss it, and that whoever hears it will weep in their souls, and to all who hear it in the distant towns. I'll make me a sound and an apparatus, and they'll call it a foghorn. And whoever hears it will know the sadness of eternity and the briefness of life."
The foghorn blew.
"I made up that story," said McDunn quietly, trying to explain why this thing keeps coming back to the lighthouse every year. "The foghorn calls, I think. It comes."
"Tss," said McDunn.
"There!"
He nodded out to the deeps. Something was swimming towards the lighthouse tower. It was a cold night, as I said. The high tower was cold, the light coming and going, and the foghorn calling and calling through the traveling mist. You couldn't see far, and you couldn't see plain, but there was a deep sea moving on its way about the night earth, flat and quiet, to color of gray mud. And here were the two of us alone in the high tower, and there, far out at first, was a ripple, followed by a wave, a rising, a bubble, a bit of froth, and then, from the surface of the cold sea came a head, a large head, dark-colored, with immense eyes, and then a neck, and then not a body, but more neck and more. The head rose a full 40 feet above the water on a slender, beautiful neck. Only then did the body, like a little island of black coral and shells and crayfish, drip up from the subterranean. There was a flicker of tail. In all, I don't know what I said. In all, from tip to tail, I estimated the monster at 90 or 100 feet. I don't know what I said. I said something.
"Steady, boy, steady," whispered McDunn.
It's impossible."
"No, Johnny. We're impossible. It's like it always was 10 million years ago. It hasn't changed. It's us. And the land and the land have changed. Impossible. Us.
A swarm, slowly, with a great majesty out in the icy waters far away. It swam. Yeah, it swam slowly with a great majesty out in the icy waters far away. The fog came and went about it, momentarily erasing its shape. One of the monster's eyes caught and held and flashed back our immense light. Red, white, red, white, like a disc held high, sending a message in primeval code. It was as silent as the fog through which it swam. It's a dinosaur of some sort. I crouched down, holding to the stair rail.
Yes, one of the tribe.
But they died out.
No, only hid away in the deeps. Deeps, deep, deep down in the deepest deeps. Isn't that a word now, Johnny? A real word? It says so much. The deeps. There's all the coldness and darkness and deepness in the world in a word like that.
What we do?
Do? We got our job. We can't leave, besides we're safer here than in any boat trying to get to land. That thing's as big as a destroyer and almost as swift.
But here, why does it come here? The next moment, I has my answer. The foghorn blew, and the monster answered. A cry came across a million years of water and mist. A cry so anguished and alone it shuddered in my head and my body. The monster cried out at the tower. The foghorn blew. The monster roared again. The foghorn blew. The monster opened its great toothed mouth, and the sound that came from it was the sound of the foghorn itself. Lonely and vast and far away, the sound of isolation, a viewless sea, a cold night, apartness. That was the sound.
Now, whispered McDunn, do you know why it comes here?
I nodded.
All year long, Johnny. That poor monster there lying far out, 1,000 miles at sea, 20 miles deep maybe, biding its time, perhaps 1,000,000 years old. This one creature. Think of it, waiting 1,000,000 years. Could you wait that long? Maybe it's the last of its kind. I sort of think that's true. Anyway, here come men on land and build this lighthouse 5 years ago, and set up their foghorn and sound it out towards the place where you bury yourself in sleep and see memories of a world where there were thousands like yourself. But now you're alone. All alone in a world that's not made for you. A world where you have to hide. But the sound of the foghorn comes and goes, and you stir from the muddy bottom of the deeps, and your eyes open like the lenses of 2-foot cameras, and you move. Slow, slow, for you have the ocean sea in your shoulders. Heavy. But that foghorn comes through 1,000 miles of water, faint and familiar, and the furnace in your belly stokes up and you begin to rise, slow, slow. You feed yourself on minnows and rivers of jellyfish, and you rise slow through the autumn months, through September when the fog started, through October with more fog and the horns still calling you on, and then, in late November, After pressurizing yourself day by day, a few feet higher every hour, you're near the surface and still alive. You've got to go slow. If you surfaced all at once, you'd explode. So it takes you all of 3 months to surface, and then a number of days to swim through the cold waters to the lighthouse. And there you are, out there in the night. Johnny, the biggest damned monster in creation. And here's the lighthouse calling you, with a long neck like your long neck, sticking way up out of the water, and a body like your body. And almost important of all, a voice like your voice. Do you understand now, Johnny? Do you understand? The foghorn blew. The monster answered. I saw it all. I knew it all. The million years of waiting alone for someone to come back who never came back. The million years of isolation at the bottom of the sea. The insanity of time there. While the skies cleared of reptile birds, the swamps fried on the continental lands. The sloths and saber-tooths had their day and sunk in the tar pits. And man ran like white ants upon the hills. The foghorn blew.
"Last year," said McDunn, "that creature swam round and round and round all night. Not coming too near, puzzled, I'd say. Afraid, maybe. A bit angry after coming all this way. But the next day, unexpectedly, the fog lifted, the sun came out fresh, the sky was as blue as a painting. Then the monster swam off, away from the heat and the silence, and didn't come back. I suppose it's been brooding on it for a year now, thinking it over from every which way. The monster was only 100 yards off now. And this foghorn crying, and the foghorn crying at each other. As the lights hit them, the monster's eyes were fire and ice, fire and ice.
That's life for you, said McDunn. Someone always waiting for someone who never comes home. Always someone loving something more than that thing loves them. And after a while you want to destroy whatever that thing is so it can hurt you no more. The monster was rushing the lighthouse. The foghorn blew. Let's see what happens, said McDunn. He switched the foghorn off. The ensuing minute of silence was so intense that we couldn't hear our hearts pounding in the glassed area of the tower. I could hear the slow, greased turn of the light. The monster stopped and froze. Its great lantern eyes blinked, its mouth gaped. It gave sort of a rumble like a volcano. It twitched its head this way and that, as if to seek the sounds now dwindled off in the fog. It peered at the lighthouse. It rumbled again. Then its eyes caught fire, teared up, threshed the water, and rushed at the tower, its eyes filled with torment. "McDunn!" I cried. "Switch on the horn!" McDunn fumbled with the switch, but even as he switched it on, the monster was rearing up. I had a glimpse of its gigantic paws, fish skin glittering in webs between the finger-like projections clawing at the tower. The huge eye on the right side of its anguished head glittered before me like a cauldron into which I might drop screaming. The tower shook. The foghorn cried. The monster cried. It seized the tower and gnashed the glass, which shattered in upon us. McDunn seized my arm. "Downstairs!" The tower rocked, trembled, and started to give. The foghorn and the monster roared. We stumbled, half fell down the stairs. "Quick!"
We reached the bottom as the tower buckled down toward us. We ducked under the stairs in the small stone cellar. There were 1,000 concussions as rocks rained down. The foghorn stopped abruptly. The monster crashed upon the tower. The tower fell. We knelt together, McDunn and I holding tight while our world exploded. Oh, excuse me. Then it was over, and there was nothing but darkness and the wash of the sea on the raw stones. That and the other sound. "Listen," said McDunn quickly. "Listen." We waited a moment, and then I began to hear it. First, a great vacuumed sucking of air, and then the lament, the bewilderment, the loneliness of the great monster. Folded over upon us, above us, so that the sickening reek of its body filled the air, a stone's thickness away from our cellar. The monster gasped and cried. The tower was gone. The light was gone. The thing that had called it across 1,000,000 years was gone. And the monster was opening its mouth and sending out great sounds, the sounds of a foghorn again and again. And the ships far at sea, not finding the light, not seeing anything but passing and hearing late that night, must have thought, "There it is, the lonely sound, the lonesome bay horn. All's well. We've rounded the cape," and so it went for the rest of the night. The sun was hot and yellow the next afternoon when the rescuers came to dig us from our stoned under cellar. "Fell apart is all," said McDunn gravely. "We had a few bad knocks from the waves, and it just crumbled." He pinched his arm. There was nothing to see. The ocean was calm, the sky blue. The only thing was a great algaeic stink from the green matter that covered the fallen tower stones and the shore rocks. Flies buzzed about. The ocean washed empty on the shore. The next year they built a new lighthouse. But that time I had a job in a little town and a wife and a good small warm house that glowed yellow on autumn nights. The doors locked, the chimney puffing smoke. As for McDunn, he was a master of the new lighthouse, built to his own specifications out of steel reinforced concrete. "Just in case," he said. The new lighthouse was ready in November. I drove down alone one evening late and parked my car and looked across the gray waters and listened to the new horn sounding once, twice, 3, 4 times a minute far out by itself. The monster? It never came back.
"It's gone away," said McDunn. "It's gone to the deeps. It's learned you can't love anything too much in this world. It's gone to the deepest deeps to wait another 1,000,000 years. Ah, the poor thing. Waiting out there, while man comes and goes on this pitiful little planet. Waiting and waiting."
I sat in my car, listening. I couldn't see the lighthouse or the light standing out in Lonesome Bay. I could only hear the horn. The horn. It sounded like the monster calling. I sat there, wishing that there was something I could say. Alrighty then. And that was The Foghorn by Ray Bradbury. Now, our next story is called The Star, and it was written by Arthur C. Clarke, and it, like a lot of Clarke's work, it asks some very big questions. And they're not always easy questions to ask. So, all right. So, it is a sad story. That I think it's interesting to me how Ray Bradbury is able to bring that human emotion of loneliness to basically a sea monster and make the reader feel it and understand, maybe understand a little bit. Yeah, it's a bit of unrequited love. It's what would it be like if you were the last of your kind? What would that feel like? What would the and then out of nowhere you heard a sound that sounded like another one of you? How would that feel? Be crazy, man. Really crazy. So, I've read Arthur C. Clarke on the stream before. The last one I read was a short story called "The 9 Billion Names of God." If you don't remember, basically these Buddhist monks, they commission a computer to calculate all 9 billion names of God, and their thesis is that when they've done that, it will bring about the end of the world, because there will be no other things to know. And at the end of the story, you kind of get a little bit of a oh crap moment, and it's great. And this is another one of those. This is another one of those stories where he asks big questions and does not necessarily answer them, but forces you to look. So this one is The Star by Arthur C. Clarke. It is 3,000 light years to the Vatican. Once I believed that space could have no power over faith, just as I believed that the heavens declared the glory of God's handiwork. Now I have seen that handiwork, and my faith is sorely troubled. I stare at the crucifix that hangs on the cabin wall above the Mark VI computer, and for the first time in my life I wonder if it is no more than an empty symbol. I have told no one yet, but the truth cannot be concealed. The facts are there for all to read, recorded on countless miles of magnetic tape and thousands of photographs we are carrying back to Earth. Other scientists can interpret them as easily as I can, and I am not one who would condone that tampering with the truth which often gave my order a bad name in the olden days. The crew are already sufficiently depressed. I wonder how they will take this ultimate irony. Few of them have any religious faith, yet they will not relish using this final weapon in their campaign against me, that private, good-natured, but fundamentally serious war which lasted all the way from the earth. It amused them to have a Jesuit as chief astrophysicist. Dr. Chandler, for instance, could never get over it. Why are medical men such notorious atheists? Sometimes he would meet me on the observation deck, where the lights are always low so that the stars shine with undiminished glory. He would come up to me in the gloom and stand staring out of the great oval port, while the heavens crawled away around us as the ship turned, end over end, with its residual spin we never bothered to correct. "Well, Father," he would say at last, "it goes on forever and ever, and perhaps something made it. But how you can believe that something has a special interest in us and our miserable little world, well, that just beats me." Then the argument would start, while the stars and nebulae would swing around us in silent, endless arcs beyond the flawlessly clear plastic of the observation port. I think, the apparent incongruity of my position that caused the most amusement to the crew. In vain I would point to my papers, 3 papers in the Astrophysical Journal, my 5 in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. I would remind them that my order has long been famous for its scientific works. We may be few now, but ever since the 18th century, we have made contributions to astronomy and geophysics, all out of proportion of our numbers. Will my report on the Phoenix Nebula end our 1,000 years of history? It will end, I fear, much more than that. I don't know who gave the nebula its name, which seems to me a very bad one. If it contains a prophecy, it is one that cannot be verified for several billion years. Even the word nebula is misleading. This is a far smaller object than those stupendous clouds of mist, the stuff of unborn stars, that are scattered throughout the length of the Milky Way. On the cosmic scale, indeed, the Phoenix Nebula is a tiny thing. A tenuous shell of gas surrounding a single star. Or what is left of a star. The Rubens engraving of Loyola seems to mock me as it hangs there above the spectrophotometer tracings. What would you, Father, have made of this knowledge that has come into my keeping, so far from the little world that was all the universe you knew? Would your faith have risen to the challenge as mine has failed to do? You gaze into the distance, Father, but I have traveled a distance beyond any that you could have imagined when you founded our order 1,000 years ago. No other survey ship has been so far from Earth. We are at the very frontiers of the explored universe. We set out to reach the Phoenix Nebula. We succeeded, and we are homeward bound with our burden of knowledge. I wish I could lift that burden from my shoulders, but I call to you in vain across the centuries and the light years that lie between us. On the book you are reading, holding the words are plain to read. Ad Maiorum Dei Gloriam. The message runs, "It is a message I can no longer believe." Would you still believe it if you could see what we have found? We knew, of course, that the Phoenix Nebula was, every year in our galaxy alone, more than 100 stars explode, blazing for a few hours or days with thousands of times their normal brilliance before they sink back into death and obscurity. Such are the ordinary novae, the commonplace disasters of the universe. I have recorded the spectrograms and light curves of dozens since I started working at the Lunar Observatory. But 3 or 4 times in every 1,000 years occurs something beside which even a novae pales in total insignificance. When a star becomes a supernova, it may, for a little while, outshine all the massed suns of the galaxy. The Chinese astronomers watched this happen in AD 1054, not knowing what it was they saw. 5 centuries later, in 1572, a supernova blazed in Cassiopeia so brilliantly that it was visible in the daylight sky. There have been 3 more in the 1,000 years that have passed since then. Our mission was to visit the remnants of such a catastrophe, to understand the events that led up to it, and, if possible, to learn its cause. We came slowly in through the centric shells of gas that had been blasted out 6,000 years ago, yet were expanding still. They were immensely hot, radiating even now with a fierce violet light. But were far too tenuous to do us any damage. When the star had exploded, its outer layer had been driven upward with such speed that they had escaped completely from its gravitational field. Now they formed a hollow shell large enough to engulf 1,000 solar systems, and at its center burned the tiny, fantastic object which the star had now become, a white dwarf. Smaller than the Earth, yet weighing 1,000,000 times as much. The glowing gas shells were all around us, banishing the normal light of interstellar space. We were flying into the center of a cosmic bomb that had detonated millennia ago and whose incandescent fragments were still hurtling apart. The immense scale of the explosion and the fact that the debris already covered a volume of space many billions of miles across robbed the scene of any visible movement. It would take decades before the unaided eye could detect any motion of these tortured wisps and eddies of gas. Yet the sense of turbulent expansion was overwhelming. Yes, TikTok, I promise I'm not a robot. Good Lord. Everybody loves TikTok. No one seriously expected to find planets. If there had been any before the explosion, they would have been boiled into puffs of vapor, and their substance lost in the greater wreckage of the star itself. But we made the automatic search, as we always do when approaching an unknown sun. And presently, we found a single small world circling the star in an immense distance. It must have been the Pluto of this vanished solar system, orbiting on the frontiers of the night, too far from the central sun ever to have known life. Its remoteness had saved it from the fate of all its lost companions. The passing fires had seared its rocks and burned away the mantle of frozen gas that must have covered it in the days before the disaster. We landed, and we found the vault. Its builders had made sure we would. The monolithic marker that stood above the entrance was now a fused stump. But even the first long-range photographs told us that there was the work of intelligence. A little later, we detected the continent-wide pattern of radioactivity that had been buried in the had been buried in the rock. Even if the pylon above the vault had been destroyed, this would have remained, an immovable and all but eternal beacon calling to the stars. Our ship fell towards this gigantic bullseye like an arrow into its target. The pylon must have been a mile high when it was built, but now it looked like a candle that had been melted down into a puddle of wax. It took us a week to drill through the fused rock, since we did not have the proper tools for a task like this. We were astronomers, not archaeologists, but we could improvise. Our regular purpose was forgotten. This lonely monument reared with such labor at the greatest possible distance from the doomed sun could have only one meaning. A civilization that knew it was about to die had made its last bid for immortality. It will take us generations to examine all the treasures that were placed in the vault. They had plenty of time to prepare, for their sun must have given its first warnings many years before the final detonation. Everything that they wished to preserve, all the fruit of their genius, they brought here to this distant world in the days before the end, hoping that some other race could find it, and that they would not be utterly forgotten. We would have done as well, or we would have been too lost in our own misery to give the thought to a future we could never see or share. If only they had had a little more time. They could travel freely enough between the planets of their own sun, but they had not yet learned to cross interstellar gulfs, and the nearest solar system was 100 light years away. Yet, even had they possessed the secret of the transfinite drive, no more than a few millions could have been saved. Perhaps it was better thus. Even if they had not been so disturbingly human as their sculpture shows, we could not have helped admiring them and grieving for their fate. They left thousands of visual records and the machines for protecting them, together with elaborate pictorial instructions from which it will not be difficult to learn their written language. We have examined many of these records and brought to life for the first time in 6,000 years the warmth and beauty of a civilization that in many ways must have been superior to our own. Perhaps they only showed us the best, and one can hardly blame them. But their words were very lovely, and their cities were built with a grace that matches anything of man's. We have watched them at work and play, and listened to their musical speech sounding across the centuries. One scene is still before my eyes, a group of children on a beach of a strange blue sand, playing in the waves as children play on earth. Curious whip-like trees line the shore, and some very large animal is wading in the shallows, yet attracting no attention at all. And sinking into the sea, still warm and friendly and life-giving, is the sun that will soon turn traitor and obliterate all this innocent happiness. Perhaps if we had not been so far from home and so vulnerable to loneliness, we should not have been so deeply moved. Many of us had seen the ruins of ancient civilizations on other worlds, but they had never affected us so profoundly. This tragedy was unique, It is one thing for a race to fail and die, as nations and cultures have done on Earth, but to be destroyed so completely in the full flower of its achievement, leaving no survivors. How could that be reconciled with the mercy of God? My colleagues have asked me that, and I have given what answers I can. Perhaps you could have done better, Father Loyola, but I have found nothing in the Exercia Spiritualia that helps me here. They were not an evil people. I do not know what gods they worshipped, if indeed they worshipped at all. But I have looked back at them from across the centuries and have watched while the loveliness they used their last strength to preserve was brought forth again into the light of their shrunken sun. They could have taught us much. Why were they destroyed? I know the answers that my colleagues will give when they get back to Earth. They will say that the universe has no purpose and no plan, that since the 100 suns exploding every year in our galaxy, at this very moment, some race is dying in the depths of space. Whether that race has done good or evil during its lifetime will make no difference in the end. There is no divine justice, for there is no God. Yet, of course, what we have seen proves nothing of the sort. Anyone who argues thus is being swayed by emotion, not logic. God has no need to justify his actions to man. He who built the universe can destroy it when he chooses. It is arrogance. It is perilously near blasphemy for us to say what he may or may not do. This I could have accepted. Hard though it is to look upon whole worlds and peoples thrown into the furnace, but there comes a point when even the deepest faith must falter. And now, as I look at the calculations lying before me, I know I have reached that point at last. Who could not tell, before we reached the nebula, how long ago the explosion took place? Now, from the astronomical evidence and the record in the rocks of that one surviving planet, I have been able to date it very exactly. I know in what year the light of its colossal conflagration reached our Earth. I know how brilliantly the supernovae whose corpse now dwindles behind our speeding ship once shone in terrestrial skies. I know how it must have blazed low in the east before sunrise, like a beacon in that oriental dawn. There can be no reasonable doubt. The ancient mystery is solved at last. Yet, oh God, there were so many stars you could have used. What was the need to give these people to the fire? The symbol of their passing might shine above Bethlehem. That's a fun one. If by fun you mean dark and holy crap. So, it is 10:12. We've been going for an hour. And I decided to pick a third story for tonight. And this third story is very easily did I not switch? Oh, I must not have switched it. Star by Arthur C. Clarke. Oh my goodness. Anyway, still getting used to switching on two different spots, but anyway, so the next story is easily one of the most controversial science fiction stories ever written. People still debate the ethics and the morals behind it. I will reveal the cover, and I will tell you the author and the title. If you know the story, do not spoil it. Do not spoil it. Oh, Tessa, morality is a construct. Whatever you say, darling. I am glad you're here, Tessa. All right. This next story, the author's name is Tom Godwin. Wasn't sure if I was going to get to this one tonight, so I didn't set it in my details, but we are here. I'll have to just do that next time. This one is The Cold Equations by Tom Godwin. No, that's not why I call myself UndeadPapa. God. Tessa be telling lies about me. So, some of you may know this story. Like I said, it is a very famous and very controversial science fiction story. If I have to explain my username, I love zombies. And I'm a dad. So, UndeadPapa just kind of made sense. But y'all can believe what you want. This story was actually adapted into, I believe, an episode of The Outer Limits. I don't think it was a Twilight Zone episode, but I do believe it was The Outer Limits. This is one of those ones where no, you don't spoil. You spoil it, young lady. Not only will you lose your GG status, but I'm going to have to come down there and whoosh. Anyway, before I... Oh, Tessa. Oh, Tessa. Just gonna have to make more videos. So this one is it Twilight Zone? I couldn't remember if it was Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits. But this is absolutely one of my favorite science fiction stories. So, let us begin. The Cold Equations by Tom Godwin. He was not alone. There was nothing to indicate the fact, but the white hand of the tiny gauge on the board before him. The control room was empty, but for himself, there was no sound other than the murmur of the drives. But the white hand had moved. It had been on 0 when the little ship was launched from the stardust. Now, an hour later, it had crept up. There was something in the supplies closet across the room. It was saying, some kind of body that radiated heat. It could be but one kind of a body. A living human body. He leaned back in the pilot's chair and drew a deep, slow breath, considering what he would have to do. He was an EDS pilot, inured to the sight of death, long since accustomed to it and to viewing the dying of another man with an objective lack of emotion. And he had no choice in what he must do. There could be no alternative, but it required a few moments of conditioning for even an EDS pilot to prepare himself to walk across the room and coldly, deliberately, take the life of a man he had yet to meet. He would, of course, do it. It was the law, stated very bluntly and definitely in grim paragraph L, section 8 of interstellar regulations. Any stowaway discovered on an EDS shall be jettisoned immediately following discovery. It was the law. There could be no appeal. It was a law not of men's choosing, but made imperative by the circumstances of the space frontier. Galactic expansion had followed the development of the hyperspace drive, and as men scattered wide across the frontier, there had come the problem of contact with the isolated first colonies and exploration parties. The huge hyperspace cruisers were the product of the combined genius and effort of Earth, and were long and expensive in the building. They were not available in such numbers that small colonies could possess them. The cruisers carried the colonists to their new worlds and made periodic visits, running on tight schedules, but they could stop and turn aside to visit colonies scheduled to be visited at another time. But they could not stop. Don't want to mess that up. But they could not stop and turn aside to visit colonies scheduled to be visited at another time. Such a delay would destroy their schedule and produce a confusion and uncertainty that would wreck the complex interdependence between old Earth and the new worlds of the frontier. Some method of delivering supplies or assistance when an emergency occurred on a world not scheduled for a visit had been needed, and the emergency dispatch ships had been the answer. Small and collapsible, they occupied little room in the hold of the cruiser. Made of light metal and plastics, they were driven by a rocket drive that consumed relatively little fuel. Each cruiser carried 4 EDSs, and when a call for aid was received, the nearest cruiser would drop into normal space long enough to launch an EDS with its needed supplies or personnel, then vanish again as it continued on its course. The cruisers, powered by nuclear converters, did not use the liquid rocket fuel, but nuclear converters were far too large and complex to permit their installation in the EDS. The cruisers were forced by necessity to carry a limited amount of bulky rocket fuel, and the fuel was rationed with care. The cruiser's computers determining the exact amount of fuel each EDS would require for its mission. The computers considered the course coordinates, the mass of the EDS, the mass of the pilot and cargo. They were very precise and accurate and omitted nothing from their calculations. They could not, however, foresee and allow for the added mass of a stowaway. The Stardust had received the request from one of the exploration parties stationed on Woden. The 6 men of the party already being stricken with the fever carried by the green kala midges, and their own supply of serum destroyed by the tornado that had torn through their camp. The Stardust had gone through the usual procedure, dropping into normal space to launch the EDS with the fever serum, then vanishing again into hyperspace. Now, an hour later, the gauge was saying that there was something in the small carton of something more than the small carton of serum in the supplies closet. He let his eyes rest on the narrow white door of the closet. There, just inside, another man lived and breathed and was beginning to feel assured that discovery of his presence would now be too late for the pilot to alter the situation. It was too late, for the man behind the door was far later than he thought, and in a way he would find terrible to believe. There could be no alternative. Additional fuel would be used during the hours of deceleration to compensate for the added mass of the stowaway. Infinitesimal increments of that fuel would not be missed until the ship had almost reached its destination. Then, at some distance above the ground, it might be as near as 1,000 feet, or as far as tens of thousands of feet, depending upon the mass of the ship and the cargo and the preceding period of deceleration. The unmissed increments of fuel would make their absence known. The EDS would expend its last drops of fuel with a sputter and go into whistling freefall. Ship and pilot and stowaway would merge together upon impact as a wreckage of metal and plastic, flesh and blood driven deep into the soil. The stowaway had signed his own death warrant when he concealed himself on the ship. He could not be permitted to take 7 others with him. He looked again at the telltale white hand, then rose to his feet. What he must do would be unpleasant for both of them. The sooner it was over, the better. He stepped across the control room to stand by the white door. "Come out!" His command was harsh and abrupt above the murmur of the drive. It seemed he could hear the whisper of a furtive movement inside the closet, then nothing. He visualized the stowaway cowering closer into one corner, suddenly worried by the possible consequences of his act, and his self-assurance evaporating. "I said out!" He heard the stowaway move to obey. He waited with his eyes alert on the door and his hand near the blaster at his side. The door opened, and the stowaway stepped through it, smiling. "All right, I give up. Now what?" It was a girl. He stared without speaking, his hand dropping away from the blaster in acceptance of what he saw coming like a heavy and unexpected physical blow. The stowaway was not a man. She was a girl, in her teens, standing before him in little white gypsy sandals with the tops of her brown curly head hardly higher than his shoulder, with a faint, sweet scent of perfume coming from her, and her smiling face tilted up so her eyes could look unknowing and unafraid into his as she waited for his answer. Now what? Had it been asked in the deep, defiant voice of a man, he would have answered it with action, quick and efficient. He would have taken the stowaway's identification disc and ordered him into the airlock. Had the stowaway refused to obey, he would have used the blaster. It would not have taken long. Within a minute, the body would have been ejected into space. Had the stowaway been a man. He turned to the pilot's chair and motioned her to seat herself on the box-like bulk of the drive control units that set against the wall beside him. She obeyed, his silence making the smile fade into the meek and guilty expression of a pup that has been caught in mischief and knows it must be punished. "You still haven't told me," she said. "I'm guilty, so what happens to me now? Do I pay a fine or what?"
"What are you doing here?" he asked. "Why did you stow away on this EDS?"
"I wanted to see my brother. He's with the government survey crew on Woden, and I haven't seen him for 10 years. Not since he left Earth to go into the government survey work."
"What was your destination on the Stardust?"
"Mimir. I have a position waiting for me there. My brother was been sending money home all this time to us. My father and mother and I. He paid for a special course in linguistics I was taking. I graduated sooner than I expected, and I was offered this job on Mimir. I knew it would be almost a year before Jerry's job was done on Woden, so he could come on to Mimir, and that's why I hid in the closet there. There was plenty of room for me, and I was willing to pay the fine. There were only the two of us kids, Jerry and I haven't seen him for so long. I didn't want to wait another year when I could see him now, even though I knew I would be breaking some kind of regulation when I did."
"I knew I would be breaking some kind of regulation." In a way, she could not be blamed for her ignorance of the law. She was of Earth, and had not realized that the laws of the space frontier must, if necessity, be as hard and relentless as the environment that gave them birth. Yet, to protect such as her from the results of their own ignorance of the frontier, there had been a sign over the door that led to the section of the Stardust that housed the EDS, a sign that was plain for all to see: "Unauthorized personnel, keep out." "Does your brother know that you took passage on the Stardust for Mimir?"
"Oh, yes. I sent him a spacegram telling him about my graduation, about going to Mimir on the Stardust a month before I left Earth. I already knew Mimir was where he would be stationed in a little over a year. He gets a promotion then, and he'll be based in Mimir and not have to stay out a year at a time on field trips, like he does now."
There were 2 different survey groups on Woden, and he asked, "What's his name?"
"Cross. Jerry Cross. He's in Group 2. That was the way his address read. Do you know him?"
Group 1 had requested the serum. Group 2 was 8,000 miles away across the Western Sea. "No, I've never met him," he said, and then turned to the control board and cut the deceleration to a fraction of a gravity. Knowing as he did so that it could not avert the ultimate end, yet doing the only thing he could do to prolong that ultimate end. The sensation was like that of the ship suddenly dropping in the girl's involuntary movement of surprise half lifted her from the seat.
"We're going faster now, aren't we?" she asked. "Why are we doing that?"
He told her the truth. To save fuel for a little while.
"You mean we don't have very much?"
He delayed the answer he must give her soon, so soon to ask, "How did you manage to stow away?"
"I just sort of walked in when no one was looking my way," she said. I was practicing my Gelanese on the native girl who does the cleaning in the ship's supply office when someone came in with an order for supplies for the survey crew on Woden. I slipped into the closet there after the ship was ready to go and just before you came in. It was an impulse of the moment to stow away so I could get to see Jerry. And from there, from the way you kept looking at me so grim, I'm not sure it was a very wise impulse. I'll be a model criminal, or I mean prisoner, she smiled at him. I intend to pay for my keep on top of paying for the fine. I can cook and I can patch clothes for everyone, and I know how to do all sorts of useful things, even a little bit of nursing. There was one more question to ask. Did you know what the supplies were that the survey crew ordered? Why, no. Equipment they needed in their work, I supposed. Why couldn't she have been a man with some ulterior motive? A fugitive from justice, hoping to lose himself on a raw new world, an opportunist seeking transportation to the new colonies where he might find golden fleece for the taking, a crackpot with a mission. Perhaps once in his lifetime an EDS pilot would find such a stowaway on his ship. Warped men, mean and selfish men, brutal and dangerous men, but never before a smiling, blue-eyed girl who was willing to pay her fine and work for her keep that she might just see her brother. He turned to the board and turned the switch that would signal the stardust. The call would be futile, but he could not, until he had exhausted that one vain hope, seize her and thrust her into the airlock as he would an animal or a man. The delay in the meantime would be dangerous, with the EDS decelerating at fractional gravity. A voice spoke from the communicator. Stardust, identify yourself and proceed. Barton, EDS 34G11. Emergency. Give me Commander Delhart. There was a faint confusion of noises as the request went through the proper channels. The girl was watching him, no longer smiling. Are you going to order them to come back after me? She asked. The communicator clicked, and there was the sound of a distant voice saying, Commander, the EDS requests... Are they coming back after me? She asked again. Won't I get to see my brother after all? Barton? The blunt, gruff voice of Commander Delhart came from the communicator. What's this about an emergency? Stowaway, he answered. Stowaway? There was a slight surprise to the question. That's rather unusual, but why the emergency call? You discovered him in time, so there would be no appreciable danger. I presume you've informed ship's records so his nearest relatives can be notified. That's why I had to call you first. The stowaway is still aboard, and the circumstances are so different. Different, the commander interrupted, impatience in his voice. How can they be different? You know you have a limited supply of fuel. You also know the law as well as I do. Any stowaway discovered in an EDS shall be jettisoned immediately following the discovery. There was a sound of a sharply indrawn breath from the girl. What does he mean? The stowaway is a girl. What? She wanted to see her brother. She's only a kid, and she didn't know what she was really doing. I see. All the curtness was gone from the commander's voice.
So you called me in the hope that I could do something. Without waiting for an answer, he went on. I'm sorry. I could do nothing. This cruiser must maintain its schedule. The life of not one person, but the lives of many depend on it. I know how you feel, but I'm powerless to help you. I'll have you connected with ship's records. The communicator faded to a faint rustle of sound, and he turned back to the girl. She was leaning forward on the bench, almost rigid, her eyes fixed wide and frightened.
What did he mean to go through with it? To jettison me? To go through? What did he mean? Not the way it sounded. He couldn't have. What did he mean? What did he really mean?
Her time was too short for the comfort of a lie to be more than a cruelly fleeting delusion. He meant it the way it sounded.
No!
She recoiled from him as though he had struck her, one hand half upraised as though to fend him off in stark unwillingness to believe in her eyes. It will have to be.
No! You're joking. You're insane. You can't mean it.
I'm sorry. He spoke slowly to her, gently. I should have told you before. I should have, but I had to do what I could do first. I had to call the Stardust. You heard what the commander said.
But you can't. If you make me leave the ship, I'll die.
I know. She searched his face, and the unwillingness to believe left her eyes, giving way slowly to a look of dazed terror.
You know,
she spoke, the words far apart, numb and wonderingly. I know. It has to be like that.
You mean it. You really mean it.
She sagged back against the wall, small and limp like a little rag doll, and all the protesting and disbelief gone.
You're going to do it. You're going to make me die here.
I'm sorry, he said again. You'll never know how sorry I am. It has to be that way, and no human in the universe can change it.
You're going to make me die, and I didn't do anything to die for. I didn't do anything.
He sighed, deep and weary. I know you didn't, child. I know you didn't. EDS? The communicator rapped brisk and metallic. This is ship's records. Give us all the information on subject's identification disk. He got out of his chair to stand over her. She clutched the edge of the seat, her upturned face white under the brown hair, and the lipstick standing out like a blood red's Cupid's bow.
Now?
I want your identification disk, he said. She released the edge of the seat and fumbled at the chain that suspended the plastic disc from her neck with fingers that were trembling and awkward. He reached down and unfastened the clasp for her, then returned with the disc to his chair. Here's your data records. Identification number T837. One moment. Records interrupted. This is to be filed on the gray card, yes? Of course. Yes. And the time of the execution? I'll tell you later.
Later, this is highly irregular. The time of the subject's death is required before. He kept the thickness out of his voice with an effort. Then we'll do it in a highly irregular manner. You'll hear the disc read first. The subject is a girl and she's listening to everything that's said. Are you capable of understanding that? There was a brief, almost shocked silence. Then Records said meekly, "Sorry, go ahead." He began to read the disc, reading it slowly to delay the inevitable for as long as possible, trying to help her by giving her what little time he could to recover from her first terror and let it resolve into the calm of acceptance and resignation. Number T8374-Y54. Name: Marilyn Lee Cross. Sex: female. Born July 7, 2160. She was only 18. Height: 5'3". Weight: 110. Such a slight weight, yet enough to add fatally to the mass of the shell-thin bubble that was an EDS. Hair: brown. Eyes: blue. Complexion: light. Blood type: O. Irrelevant data. Destination: Port City, Mimir. Invalid data. He finished and said, "I'll call you later," then turned once again to the girl. She was huddled back against the wall, watching him with a look of numb and wondering fascination. "They're waiting for you to kill me, aren't they? They want me dead, don't they? You and everybody else on that cruiser wants me dead, don't they?" Then the numbness broke, and her voice was that of a frightened and bewildered child. "Everybody wants me dead, and I didn't do anything. I didn't hurt anyone. I only wanted to see my brother." "It's not the way you think. It isn't that way at all," he said. "Nobody wants it this way. Nobody would ever let it be this way if it was humanly possible to change it." "Then why is it? I don't understand. Why is it?" "This ship is carrying Kala fever serum to Group 1 on Woden. Their own supply was destroyed by a tornado. Group 2, the crew your brother is in, is 8,000 miles away across the Western Sea, and their helicopters can't cross it to help Group 1. The fever is invariably fatal unless the serum can be had in time, and the 6 men in Group 1 will die unless this ship reaches them on schedule. These little ships are always given barely enough fuel to reach their destination, and if you stay aboard, your added weight will cause it to use up all its fuel before it reaches the ground. It will crash, and then you and I will die, and so will the 6 men waiting for the fever serum." It was a full minute before she spoke, and as she considered his words, the expression of numbness left her eyes. "Is that it?" she asked. "Just that the ship doesn't have enough fuel?" "Yes." "I can go alone, or I can take 7 others with me. Is that the way it is?" "That's the way it is." "And nobody wants me to have to die?" "Nobody." "Maybe. Are you sure nothing can be done about it? Wouldn't people help me if they could? Everyone would like to help you, but there is nothing anyone can do. I did the only thing I could do when I called the Stardust. And it won't come back. But there might be other cruisers, might there be?" Isn't there any hope at all that there might be someone somewhere who could do something to help me? She was leaning forward a little in her eagerness as she waited for his answer. No. The word was like a drop of cold stone, and she again leaned back against the wall, the hope and eagerness leaving her face. You're sure? You know you're sure? I'm sure. There are no other cruisers within 40 light years. There is nothing and no one to change things. She dropped her gaze to her lap and began twisting a pleat of her skirt between her fingers, saying no more as her mind began to adapt itself to the grim knowledge. It was better so. With the going of all hope would go the fear. With the going of all hope would come resignation. She needed time, and she could have so little of it. How much? The EDSs were not equipped with hull cooling units. Their speed had to be reduced to a moderate level before entering the atmosphere. They were decelerating at 0.1 gravity, approaching their destination at a far higher speed than the computers had calculated. The Stardust had been quite near Woden when she launched the EDS. Their present velocity was putting them nearer by the second, and there would be a critical point soon to be reached when he would have to resume deceleration. When he did so, the girl's weight would be multiplied by the gravities of deceleration, would become suddenly a factor of paramount importance, the factor that computers have been ignorant of when they determine the amount of fuel the EDS should have. She would have to go when the deceleration began. It could be no other way. When would that be? How long could he let her stay? How long can I stay? He winced involuntarily from the words that were so like an echo of his own thoughts. How long? He didn't know. He would have to ask the ship's computers. Each EDS was given a meager surplus of fuel to compensate for unfavorable conditions within the atmosphere, and relatively little fuel was being consumed for the time being. The memory banks of the computers would still contain all data pertaining to the course set for the EDS. Such data would not be erased until the EDS reached its destination. He had only to give the computers the new data, the girl's weight, and the exact time at which he had reduced the deceleration to 0.1. Barton? Commander Delhart's voice came abruptly across from the communicator as he opened his mouth to call the Stardust. A check with records shows me you haven't completed your report. Did you reduce the deceleration? So the commander knew what he was trying to do. I'm decelerating at 0.10, he answered. I cut the deceleration at 750, and the weight is 110. I would like to stay at 0.10 as long as the computers say I can. Will you give them the question? It was contrary to regulations for an EDS pilot to make any changes in the course or degree of deceleration to the computers that had been set for him. But the commander made no mention of the violation, neither did he ask the reason for it. It was not necessary for him to ask. He had not become commander of an interstellar cruiser without both intelligence and an understanding of human nature. He said only, I'll have that given to the computers. The communicator fell silent, and he and the girl waited, neither of them speaking. They would not have to wait long. The computers would give the answer within moments of asking. The new factors would be fed into the steel maw of the first bank, and the electrical impulses would go through the complex circuits. Here and there a relay might click, a tiny cog turn over, but it would be essentially the electrical impulses that found the answer. Formless, mindless, invisible, determining with utter precision how long the pale girl beside him might live. Then a second steel maw would spit out the answer. The chronometer on the instrument panel board read 1810 when the commander spoke again. You will resume deceleration at 1910. She looked toward the chronometer, then quickly away from it. Is that when I go? She asked. He nodded, and she dropped her eyes to her lap again. I'll have the course corrections given you, the commander said. Ordinarily, I would never permit anything like this, but I understand your position. There is nothing I can do other than what I've just done, and you will not deviate from these new instructions. You will complete your report at 1910. Now, here are the course corrections. The voice of some unknown technician read them to him, and he wrote them down on the pad clipped to the edge of the control board. There would, he saw, be periods of deceleration where he neared the atmosphere, when the deceleration would be 5 gravities. And at 5 gravities, 110 pounds would become 550 pounds. The technician finished, and he terminated the contact with a brief acknowledgement. Then, hesitating a moment, he reached out and shut off the communicator. It was 1813, and he should have nothing to report until 1910. In the meantime, it somehow seemed indecent to permit others to hear what she might say her last hour. He began to check the instrument readings, going over them with unnecessary slowness. She would have to accept the circumstances, and there was nothing he could do to help her into acceptance. Words of sympathy would only delay it. It was 1820 when she stirred from her motionlessness and spoke. So that's the way it has to be with me. He swung around to face her. You understand now, don't you? No one would ever let it be like this if it could be changed. I understand, she said. Some of the color had returned to her face, and the lipstick no longer stood out so vividly red. There isn't enough fuel for me to stay. When I hit on this ship, I got into something I didn't know anything about, and now I have to pay for it. She had violated a man-made law that said keep out, but the penalty was not of men's making or desire. It was a penalty men could not revoke. A physical law had decreed H amount of fuel will power an EDS with a mass of M safely to its destination. And a second physical law had decreed that H amount of fuel will not power an EDS with a mass of M plus X safely to its destination. EDSs obeyed only physical laws, and no amount of human sympathy for her could alter the second law. But I'm afraid. I don't want to die. Not now. I want to live, and nobody is doing anything to help me. Everybody is letting me go ahead and acting just like nothing was going to happen to me. I'm going to die, and nobody cares. We all do, he said. I do. The commander does, and the clerk in the ship's records. We all care. And each of us did what little he could to help.
It wasn't enough. It was almost nothing, but it was all we could do.
Not enough fuel. I can understand that, she said, as though she had not heard his own words. But to have to die for it? Me? Alone? How hard it must be for her to accept that fact. She had never known danger or death, and had never known the environments where the lives of men could be as fragile and fleeting as sea foam tossed against a rocky shore. She belonged on gentle earth, in that secure and peaceful society where she could be young and gay and laughing with others of her kind, where life was precious and well guarded, and there was always the assurance that tomorrow would come. She belonged in that world of soft winds and warm suns, music and moonlight and gracious manners, and not on the hard, bleak frontier. How did this happen to me so terribly quickly? An hour ago I was on the Stardust going to Mimir. Now the Stardust is going on without me, and I'm going to die. And I'll never see Jerry and Mama and Daddy again. I'll never see anything again. He hesitated, wondering how he could explain it to her so she would really understand, and not feel she had somehow been the victim of a reasonlessly cruel injustice. She did not know what the frontier was like. She thought in terms of safe and secure Earth. Pretty girls were not jettisoned on Earth. There was a law against it. On Earth, her plight would have filled the newscasts, and a fast black patrol ship would have been racing to her rescue. Everyone, everywhere, would have known of Marilyn Lee Cross, and no effort would have been spared to save her life. But this was not Earth, and there were no patrol ships, only the Stardust, leaving them behind at many times the speed of light. There was no one to help her. There would be no Marilyn Lee Cross smiling from the newscasts tomorrow. Marilyn Lee Cross would be but a poignant memory for an EDS pilot, and a name on a gray card in ship's records. It's different here. It's not like back on Earth, he said. It isn't that no one cares. It's that no one can do anything to help. The frontier is big. And here, along its rim, the colonies and exploration parties are scattered so thin and far between. On Woden, for example, there are only 16 men. 16 men on an entire world. The exploration parties, the survey crews, the first colonies, they're all fighting alien environments, trying to make a way for those who will follow after. The environments fight back. And those who go first usually make mistakes only once. There's no margin for safety along the rim of the frontier. There can't be until the way is made for the others who will come later. Until the new worlds are tamed and settled. Until then, men will have to pay the penalty for making mistakes with no one to help them because there is no one to help them. I was going to Mimir, she said. I didn't know about the frontier. I was only going to Mimir, and it's safe. Mimir is safe. But you left the cruiser, and that was taking you, and you left the cruiser that was taking you there. She was silent for a little while. It was all so wonderful at first. There was plenty of room for me down this ship, and I would be seeing Jerry soon, and I didn't know about the fuel. Didn't know what would happen to me. Her words trailed away, and he turned his attention to the view screen, not wanting to stare at her as she fought her way through the black horror of fear toward the calm gray of acceptance. Woden was a ball, enshrouded in the blue haze of its atmosphere, swimming in space against the background of star-sprinkled dead blackness. The great mass of Manning's continent sprawled like a gigantic hourglass in the eastern sea, with the western half of the eastern continent still visible. There was a thin line of shadow along the right-hand edge of the globe, and the eastern continent was disappearing into it as the planet turned on its axis. An hour before the entire continent had been in view, now 1,000 miles of it had gone into the thin edge of shadow and around to the night that lay on the other side of the world. The dark blue spot that was Lotus Lake was approaching the shadow. It was somewhere near the southern edge of that lake that Group 2 had their camp. It would be night there soon. And quick behind the coming night of the rotation of Woden on its axis would put Group 2 beyond the reach of the ship's radio. He would have to tell her before it was too late for her to talk to her brother. In a way, it would be better for them both should they not do so, but it was not for him to decide. To each of them, the last words would be something to hold and cherish, something that would cut like the blade of a knife, yet would feel infinitely precious to remember. She for her own brief moments to live, and he for the rest of his life. He held down the button that would flash the grid lines on the view screen and used the known diameter of the planet to estimate the distance the southern tip of Lotus Lake had yet to go until it passed beyond radio range. It was approximately 500 miles. 500 miles. 30 minutes. And the chronometer read 1830. Allowing the error in estimating, it could not be later than 1905 that the turning of Woden would cut off her brother's voice. The first border of the western continent was already in sight, along the left side of the world. 4,000 miles across lay the shore of the Western Sea and the camp of Group 1. It had been in the Western Sea that the tornado had originated, to strike with such fury at the camp and destroy half their prefabricated buildings, including the one that housed the medical supplies. 2 days before the tornado had not existed. It had been no more than great gentle masses of air out over the calm Western Sea. Group 1 had gone about their routine survey work, unaware of the meeting of the air masses out at sea, unaware of the force the Union was spawning. It had struck their camp without warning, a thundering, roaring destruction that sought to annihilate all that lay before it. It had passed on, leaving the wreckage in its wake. It had destroyed the labor of months, and had doomed 6 men to die, and then, as though its task was accomplished, once more it began to resolve into gentle masses of air. But for all its deadliness, it had destroyed with neither malice nor intent. It had been a blind, mindless force, obeying the laws of nature, and would have followed the same course with the same fury had men never existed. Existence required order, and there was order, the laws of nature, irrevocable and immutable. Men could learn to use them, but men could not change them. The circumference of a circle was always pi times the diameter, and no distance of man could ever make it otherwise. No science of man could make it otherwise. The combination of chemical A with chemical B under condition C invariably produced reaction D. The law of gravitation was a rigid equation, and it made no distinction between the fall of a leaf and the ponderous circling of a binary star system. The nuclear conversion process powered the cruisers that carried men to the stars. The same process in the form of a nova would destroy a world with equal efficiency. The laws were, and the universe moved in obedience to them. Along the frontier were arrayed all the forces of nature, and sometimes they destroyed those who were fighting their way outward from Earth. The men of the frontier had long ago learned the bitter futility of cursing the forces that would destroy them, for the forces were blind and deaf. The futility of looking to the heavens for mercy, for the stars of the galaxy swung in their own long sweep of 200 million years, as inexorably controlled as by the laws that neither hated knew neither hatred nor compassion. Men of the frontier knew, but how was a girl from Earth to fully understand? H amount of fuel will not power an EDS with a mass of M plus X safely to its destination. To him and her brother and parents, she was a sweet-faced girl in her teens. To the laws of nature, she was X, the unwanted factor in a cold equation. She stirred again in the seat. Could I write a letter? I want to write to Mama and Daddy, and I'd like to write to Jerry. I'd like to talk to Jerry. Could you let me talk to him over your radio there? I'll try to get him, he said. He switched on the normal space transmitter and pressed the signal button. Someone answered the buzzer almost immediately. Hello. How's it going out there with you fellows now? Is the EDS on its way? This isn't Group 1. This is the EDS. Is Jerry Cross there? Jerry? He and 2 others went out in the helicopter this morning and aren't back. It's almost sundown, though, and he ought to be back right away, in less than an hour at the most. Can you connect me through to the radio in his copter? No, it's been out of commission for months. Some of the printed circuits went haywire, and we can't get any more until the next cruiser stops by. It is something important. Bad news for him or something? Yes, it's very important. When he comes in, get him to the transmitter as soon as you possibly can. I'll do that. I'll have one of the boys waiting at the field with the truck. Is there anything else I can do? No. I guess that's all. Get him there as soon as you can and signal me. He turned the volume to an inaudible minimum, an act that would not affect the functioning of the signal buzzer, and unclipped the pad of paper from the control board. He tore off the sheet containing his flight instructions and handed the pad to her, together with a pencil. I'd better write to Jerry, too, she said as she took them. He might not get back to camp in time. She began to write, her fingers still clumsy and uncertain in the way that they handled the pencil, and the top of it trembling a little as she poised it between words. He turned back to the view screen to stare at it without seeing it. She was a lonely little child, trying to say her last goodbye, and she would lay out her heart to them. She would tell them about how much she loved them, and she would tell them not to feel badly about it, that it was something that must happen eventually to everyone, and that she was not afraid. The last would be a lie, and it would be there to read between the sprawling, uneven lines. A valiant little lie that would make the hurt all the greater for them. Her brother was of the frontier, and he would understand. He would not hate the EDS pilot for doing nothing to prevent her going. He would know there had been nothing the pilot could do. He would understand. Though the understanding would not soften the shock and pain when he learned his sister was gone, but the others, her father and mother, they would not understand. They were of Earth, and they would think in the manner of those who had never lived where the safety margin of life was a thin, thin line, and sometimes not at all. What would they think of the faceless, unknown pilot who had sent their daughter to her death? They would hate him with cold and terrible intensity, but it really didn't matter. He would never see them, never know them. He would have only the memories to remind him, only the nights to fear. When a blue-eyed girl in gypsy sandals would come into his dreams to die again. He scowled at the view screen and tried to force his thoughts into less emotional channels. There was nothing he could do to help her. She had unknowingly subjected herself to the penalty of a law that recognized neither innocence nor youth nor beauty. That was incapable of sympathy or leniency. Regret was illogical, and yet could knowing it be illogical ever keep it away? She stopped occasionally, as though trying to find the right words to tell them what she wanted them to know. Then the pencil would resume its whispering. It was 1837 when she folded the letter in a square and wrote a name on it. She began writing another, twice looking up at the chronometer as though she feared the black hand might reach its rendezvous before she had finished. And it was 1845 when she folded it, and she had done the first letter and wrote a name and address on it. She held the letters out to him. "Will you take these and see that they're enveloped and mailed?" "Of course." He took them from her hand and placed them in a pocket of his gray uniform shirt. "These can't be set off until the next These can't be set off and sent off until the next cruiser stops by, and the Stardust will have long since told them about me, won't it?" Oops. Wrong voice. "These can't be sent off until the next cruiser stops by, and the Stardust will have long since told them about me, won't it?" She nodded. She asked. He nodded, and she went on. "That makes the letters not important in one way, but in another way they're very important to me and to them." "I know. I understand. And I'll take care of them for you." She glanced at the chronometer, then called back. "It seems to have moved faster all the time, doesn't it?" He said nothing, unable to think of anything to say, and she asked, "Do you think Jerry will come back to camp in time?" "I think so. They said he should be back right away." She began to roll the pencil back and forth between her palms. "I hope he does. I feel sick and scared, and I want to hear his voice again, and maybe I won't feel so alone. I'm a coward, and I can't help it." "No," he said. "You're not a coward. You're afraid, but you're not a coward." "Is there a difference?" He nodded. "A lot of difference." "I feel so alone. I never did feel like this before. Like I was all by myself and there was nobody to care what happened to me. Always before there was Mama and Daddy, and there were my friends around me. I had lots of friends. And they had a going away party for me the night before I left. Friends and music and laughter for her to remember. And on the view screen, Lotus Lake was going into the shadow. Is it the same with Jerry? She asked. I mean, if he should make a mistake, would he have to die for it? All alone, with no one to help him?
It's the same with all along the frontier. It will always be like that so long as there is a frontier.
Jerry didn't tell us. He said the pay was good and he sent money home all the time because Daddy's little shop just brought in a bare living. But he didn't tell us it was like this.
He didn't tell you that his work was dangerous?
Well, yes, he mentioned it, but we didn't understand. I always thought that danger along the frontier was something that was a lot of fun, an exciting adventure like in the 3D shows.
A wan smile touched her face for a moment.
Only it's not, is it? It's not the same at all because when it's real, you can go home after the show. You can't go home after the show is over.
No, he said. No, you can't. Her glance flicked from the chronometer to the door of the airlock and then down to the pad and pencil she still held. She shifted her position slightly to lay them on the bench beside her, moving one foot out a little. For the first time, he saw that she was not wearing vegan gypsy sandals, but only cheap imitations. The expensive vegan leather was some kind of grained plastic. The silver buckle was gilded iron. The jewels were colored glass. Daddy's little shop just brought in a bare living. She must have left college in her second year to take the course in linguistics that would enable her to make her own way and help her brother provide for her parents, earning what she could by part-time work after classes were over. Her personal possessions on the Stardust would be taken back to her parents. They would neither be of much value nor occupy much storage space on the return voyage.
Isn't it?
She stopped and looked at her questioningly. He stopped and looked at her questioningly.
Isn't it cold in here? She asked, almost apologetically. Doesn't it seem cold to you?
Why, yes, he said. He saw by the main temperature gauge that the room was at precisely normal temperature. Yes, it's colder than it should be.
I wish Jerry would get back before it's too late. Do you really think he will? And you didn't just say so to make me feel better?
I think he will. They said it would be in pretty soon. On the view screen, Lotus Lake had gone into the shadow, but for the thin blue line of its western edge, it was apparent he had overestimated the time she would have in which to talk to her brother. Reluctantly, he said to her, "His camp will be out of range in a few minutes. He's on that part of Woden that's in the shadow." He indicated the view screen. "And the turning of Woden will put him beyond contact. There may not be much time left when he comes in. Not much time to talk to him before he fades out. I wish I could do something about it. I would call him right now if I could."
Not even as much time as I will have to stay?
I'm afraid not.
Then
she straightened up and looked toward the airlock with pale resolution.
Then I'll go when Jerry passes beyond range. I won't wait any longer after that. I won't have anything to wait for. Again, there was nothing he could say. Maybe I shouldn't wait at all. Maybe I'm selfish. Maybe it would be better for Jerry if you just told him about it afterward. There was an unconscious pleading for denial in the way she spoke, and he said he wouldn't want you to do that, to not wait for him. It's already coming dark where he is, isn't it? There will be all the long night before him, and Mama and Daddy don't know yet that I won't ever be coming back like I promised them I would. I've caused everyone I love to be hurt, haven't I? I didn't want to. I didn't intend to. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. They'll know that. They'll understand. At first, I was so afraid to die that I was a coward and thought only of myself. Now I see how selfish I was. The terrible thing about dying like this is not that I'll be gone, but that I'll never see them again. Never be able to tell them that I didn't take them for granted. Never be able to tell them I knew of the sacrifices they made to make my life happier. And I know all the things they did for me. And that I loved them so much, more than I ever told them. I've never told them any of those things. You don't tell them such things when you're young and your life is all before you. You're afraid of sounding sentimental and silly. But it's so different when you have to die. You wish you had told them while you could, and you wish you could tell them you're sorry for all the little mean things you ever did or said to them. You wish you could tell them that you didn't really mean to ever hurt their feelings, and for them to only remember that you always loved them far more than you ever let them know. You don't have to tell them that, he said. They will know. They've always known it. Are you sure? She asked. How can you be sure? My people are strangers to you. Wherever you go, human nature and human hearts are the same. And they will know what I want them to know, that I love them. They've always known it. In a way far better than you could ever put in words for them. I keep remembering the things they did for me. And it's the little things they didn't seem to be the most it's the little things they didn't seem to be the most important to me now. Like Jerry. He sent me a bracelet of fire rubies for my 16th birthday. It was beautiful. It must have cost him a month's pay, yet I remember him more for what he did the night my kitten got run over in the street. I was only 6 years old, and he held me in his arms and wiped away my tears and told me not to cry, that Fluffy was gone for just a little while, for just long enough to get herself a new fur coat, and she would be on the foot of my bed the very next morning. I believed him, and quit crying and went to sleep, dreaming about my kitten coming back. When I woke up the next morning, there was Flossie on the foot of my bed, in a brand new white fur coat, just like he had said she would be. It wasn't until a long time after that Mama told me Jerry had got the pet shop owner out of bed at 4 a.m. And when the man got mad about it, Jerry told him he was either going to go down and sell him the white kitten, then, or he'd break his neck. It's always the little things you remember people by. All the little things they did because they wanted to do them for you. You've done the same for Jerry. And your father and mother, all kinds of things you've forgotten about, but that they will never forget. I hope I have. I would like for them to remember me like that. They will. I wish. She swallowed. The way I'll die. I wish they would never think of that. I've read how people look who die in space. Their insides all ruptured and exploded, and their lungs out between their teeth, and then a few seconds later they're all dry and shapeless and horribly ugly. I don't want them to ever think of me as something dead and horrible like that. You're their own child. Their child and their sister. They could never think of you other than the way you would want them to. The way you looked the last time they saw you. I'm still afraid, she said. I can't help it. But I don't want Jerry to know it. If he gets back in time, I'm going to act like I'm not afraid at all. The signal buzzer interrupted, quick and imperative. Jerry! She came to her feet. It's Jerry now! He spun the volume control novel and asked, Jerry Cross? Yes, her brother answered, an undertone of tenseness to his reply. The bad news, what is it? She answered for him, standing close behind him and leaning down a little toward the communicator, her hand resting small and cold on his shoulder. Hello, Jerry. There was only a faint quaver to betray the careful casualness of her voice. I wanted to see you. Marilyn? There was a sudden and terrible apprehension in the way he spoke her name. What are you doing on an EDS? I wanted to see you, she said again. I wanted to see you, so I hid on this ship. You hid on it? I'm a stowaway. I didn't know what it would mean. Marilyn! It was the cry of a man who calls hopeless and desperate to someone already and forever gone from him. What have you done? It's not... Then her own composure broke, and the cold little hand gripped his shoulder convulsively. Don't, Jerry. I only wanted to see you. I didn't intend to hurt you. Please, Jerry, don't feel like that. Something warm and wet splashed on his wrist, and he slid out of the chair to help her into it and swing the microphone down to her. Don't feel like that. Don't let me go knowing you feel like that. The sobs she had tried to hold back choked in her throat, and her brother spoke to her. Don't cry, Marilyn. His voice was suddenly deep and infinitely gentle, with all the pain held out of it. Don't cry, sis. You mustn't do that. It's all right, honey. Everything is all right. Her lower lip quivered, and she bit into it. I didn't want you to feel that way. I just wanted us to say goodbye because I have to go in a minute. Sure, that's the way it will be, sis. I didn't mean to sound the way I did. Then his voice changed to a tone of quick and urgent demand. EDS, have you called the Stardust? Did you check with the computers? I called the Stardust almost an hour ago. It can't turn back. There are no other cruisers within 40 light years, and there isn't enough fuel. Are you sure the computers had the correct data? Sure of everything? Yes. Do you think I could ever let it happen if I wasn't sure? I did everything I could do.
If there was anything at all I could do now, I would do it.
He tried to help me, Jerry. Her lower lip was no longer trembling, and the shirt sleeves of her blouse were wet where she had dried her tears. No one can help me. And I'm not going to cry anymore, and everything will be all right with you and Daddy and Mama, won't it? Sure. Sure it will. We'll make out fine. His brother's words were beginning to come in more faintly. He turned the volume control to maximum. He's going out of range, he said to her. He'll be gone within another minute. Jerry, you're fading out, she said. You're going out of range. I wanted to tell you, but I can't now. We must say goodbye so soon, but maybe I'll see you again. Maybe I'll come to you in your dreams with my hair in braids and crying because the kitten in my arms is dead. Maybe I'll be the touch of a breeze that whispers to you as it goes by. Maybe I'll be one of those gold-winged larks you told me about, singing my silly little head off to you. Maybe, at times. I'll be nothing you can see, but you will know I'm there beside you. Think of me like that, Jerry. Always like that. And not the other way. Dimmed to a whisper by the turning of Wooden, the answer came back. Always like that, Marilyn. Always like that. And never any other way. Our time is up, Jerry. I've got to go now. Good. Her voice broke in mid-word, and her mouth tried to twist into crying. She pressed her hand hard against it, and when she spoke again, the words came clear and true. Goodbye, Jerry. Faint and ineffably poignant and tender, the last words came from the cold metal of the communicator. Goodbye, little sister. She sat motionless in the hush that followed, as though listening to the shadow echoes of the words as they died away. Then she turned away from the communicator, toward the airlock, and he pulled down the black lever beside him. The inner door of the lock slid swiftly open to reveal the bare little cell that was waiting for her, and she walked into it. She walked with her head up, and the brown curls brushing her shoulders, with the white sandals stepping as sure and as steady as the fractional gravity would permit, and the gilded buckles twinkling with the little lights of blue and red and crystal. He let her walk alone and made no move to help her, knowing she would not want it that way. She stepped into the airlock and turned to face him, only the pulse in her throat to betray the wild beating of her heart. I'm ready, she said. He pushed the lever up, and the door slid its quick barrier between them, enclosing her in black and utter darkness for her last moments of life. It clicked as it locked in place, and he jerked down the red lever. There was a slight waver to the ship as the air gushed from the lock, a vibration to the wall as though something had bumped the outer door in passing. Then there was nothing, and the ship was dropping true and steady again. He shoved the red lever back to close the door on the empty airlock and turned away to walk to the pilot's chair with the slow steps of a man old and weary. Back in the pilot's chair, he pressed the signal button of the normal space transmitter. There was no response. He had expected none. her brother would have to wait through the night until the morning turning of Woden permitted contact through Group 1. It was not yet time to resume deceleration, and he waited while the ship dropped endlessly downward with him, and the drives purred softly. He saw that the white hand of the supplies closet temperature was on zero. A cold equation had been balanced, and he was alone on the ship. Something shapeless and ugly was hurrying ahead of him, going to Woden where its brother was waiting through the night, but the empty ship still lived for a little while with the presence of the girl who had not known about the forces that killed with neither hatred nor malice. It seemed almost that she still sat small and bewildered and frightened on the metal box beside him, her words echoing hauntingly clear in the void she had left behind her. I didn't do anything to die for. I didn't do anything. Well, now that I've sufficiently brought the room down, it's an amazing story, but it is definitely one that it's a gut punch. There's really no other way to describe it. It is a gut punch. So, I feel bad leaving you guys like this. I'm just like, oh, it's the end of the night. Oh, well. So, but anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate you as always. I'll be back again on Sunday night for another Sunday Night Bedtime Stories where we will continue to read The Borrowers. And then hopefully, if we finish that, the following week we will start Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. I appreciate all of you for being here. Doing this is just, it gives me life, so to speak. But I will say what I always say. Please, it is more important now than ever. Please be kind to each other. And be kind to yourself, because kindness matters. And so do you. I love you guys. I'll see you Sunday.